My name is Agnes Patterson, but I like to be called Ange. Everybody calls me that, my grandchildren and everything. I'm Nana Ange. I was born in England in 1933. The street that I lived in was just right the way down, of just doors and windows. That's all it was, like a door and a window. We had a backyard with just pavers in. The toilet was down the back of the yard, and in the winter we lagged it all with carpet stuff so that it wouldn't freeze over. It was awful. We didn't have a garden, and they were straight off the pavement into the house. There was my grandmother, my mum and dad, and 5 girls, all living in one 3-bedroom house. Don't remember much of my grandmother because she died at 83, I think she was. There was just one room where we had a table and chairs and the radio. We didn't have TV. And a big wall was all black oven and fire. It was always lovely and warm, and a big fire guard. Mum cooked everything in the oven. She used to get the fire going in the morning, well, Dad did when he stopped work. She'd put things in the big brown pot at 9 o'clock in the morning. We'd eat it at 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night, you know. Casseroles and that. We had a roast on a Sunday, whatever it might be, roast beef or chicken on a special occasion, especially through the war. We only had rations, so we could only have fish one day, and she'd go and queue up for fish, and then you got usual rations. Bread was rationed, everything. Oh, it was a hell of a time. Absolutely terrible. It was scary, honest to God. But we used to hear the planes, and Marion and I used to be up in bed, same room as Mum, till my sisters got married and moved out, because Mary was in one room, Hilda and Kathleen in another room, Mum and Dad and me and Marion in the big room at the front. But I can remember going to bed and hearing noises of a plane, and we'd shout, "Dad, Dad, there's an aeroplane, is it a bomber?" And he always used to say, "No, it's one of ours." He always said that, whether it was or not, because we wouldn't go to sleep if they said, "No, it's a German one." It had a different sound, the engine. We'd never heard bombs dropping because we were too far away. Manchester was hit with it and London. Shocking, but we didn't. Thank God. But the rations, oh my God. They would have a big wooden clothes horse round the fire, and Dad would be the one when he couldn't work to keep turning it round so that, you know, it was for that whistling away. I can see him now, whistling away and feeling and turning them, shaking them out and all that. I could cry when I think about it, you know, but we were very lucky, I guess. I loved it. I loved being home. I was naughty. I know I was naughty because my mum was only 5'0". My grandma was a little pudding. She was 5'0". I can remember my mum, we had this big table pushed along the wall, but we brought it out when there was meals so we could all get round it. Mum used to chase me, and I used to be a bit cheeky, and she'd try to hit me with a towel or something. And I used to run so fast because she said she's got long legs. And she used to flick the table at me, and just wait till your dad come on. Well, that was it, because I loved my dad. If you don't tell Dad, I'd be so good after that. And I'd go, "Mum, don't tell Dad what I did." And she said, "Why should I not? You know, you don't listen to me." And, "No, don't tell him. Promise me you won't tell him." Because in the end, she'd say she wouldn't, but I knew she did, you know, when I'd gone. But I just loved Dad. I don't know what it was, something special. I think it was because I was more like him than the other girls, because all the girls were like my grandmother with the red hair, and I was the only one with the black hair. I don't know where, I used to say, "Where did I come from?" And my mum had a joke. We used to go out and people would say, "Who does she belong to?" And she'd say, "Oh, she's the coalman's daughter." My mother used to say. And I remember that. I used to say, "What do you say that for?" I didn't know what the coalman had to do with it at that age, but you know, I was more like Dad, I think, in looks. Brown eyes, and the other girls didn't have brown eyes, they had my mum's eyes. Marion and I, the only two with brown eyes, but Marion got the red hair. So, you know, I was one on my own. And she hated me, my little sister, because she was short and fatter and I was long and skinny. And when we used to wait for Dad coming home, we used to get off the trolley bus. We used to stand on the corner and he'd turn around with his little case from his lunch. And we used to start to run who could get the case. And of course, me with my long legs always used to get there first. And she said, "You always beat me, you." But I had to get Dad's hand, you see. Hold his hand and carry his case. I thought I was proud. That was it. That was in, I can see it all now. I can see the street we ran down. It was lovely. And then Dad had to stop work because he had an accident and he went blind in one eye. And he said, I'll try to work until all the girls get to work. But he had to retire. When I was at the school, which was just a church school, Sacred Heart, and you just went until you were 14, 15, and the headmistress came and asked, would some of us go to the technical college and sit the exam? We didn't have to go, but it would be credit to the school if we got somebody to win. So she picked 5 girls, I was one of them, trembling in my shoes because I'd never done anything like it before. I thought I won't pass, so I'll just do it anyway. So it's Saturday afternoon, we did the exam, and then we waited. And then after a little while, Miss Roberts, our headmistress, came in and said that 2 of us had got through. And that was me and Margaret Barker, and I nearly fainted. And I said to her, I'm not going. She said, no, I'm not going either. But then when I went home and told my mum, I knew it would mean uniforms, more money, gym uniforms, school uniforms, summer uniforms, hats and blazers, because it was like a secondary thing. But my sister was there. 3 of my sisters were working, and they said, no, let her go. We'll all put in and help. And so I did. I went. I was short-hand typing, English, civics, bookkeeping, everything to do with being in an office and so on. And I really enjoyed it. It was hard work, but I enjoyed it. And the last year I came top in English, which I was ever so proud of. I was about the 23rd in geography, but that's another story. Shorthand typing and English and everything. So we had to leave. Then I found myself a job. Just before we left, we had to look in the paper and apply for jobs, even if we didn't go. That was teaching us what to do. And I applied for the job at Tunnicliffe and Hampsons. It was a big 3 factories, spinning, carding, and whatever they do with wool there. And I decided I'd apply for that. And another girl in the class applied. We were called for an interview. She went before me. I said, was it hard? She said, no. I went. It was, you had to multiply big figures, like thousands by thousands, and see. I was trying to go over a second time, see if I'd made a mistake. But obviously I hadn't. And about a week later, I got a letter to say that I got the job. So I went there as junior. It was about 3 men, a couple of women, and a typist, and so I would to learn the switchboard and all that. It would terrify me, but I loved that job. And even though I didn't like maths, I ended up doing wages for the whole of 1 mill. They used to bring all them in from the foreman with the hours, and we were doing pounds, shillings and pence and halfpennies then. And we had to work them all out from late Friday afternoon and Monday. And then Tuesday we balanced it all up, or the ledger had to balance. Then we swapped, and somebody checked me, and then I checked theirs. So it was all figure work. And we used to add up in the head. And we used to count the notes, count this. We had to write out all these little slips of the money, then take it to the factory and stand there. And they'd come up one by one, the men give you the slip with the number, you'd give it there and give him that money, and he'd check it. And if there was a halfpenny short, God help you, because, we had to balance to nothing. And why I liked it, I don't know, but I loved that job. When I think about it, the subject I hated at school was maths, and that was the job I was doing all the time. It's not there now. It's all been wiped away. There's no cotton mills. It's now a big estate, and some of my relatives are living on there. I met Matthew at a dance at St Joseph's Hall. We used to go to Saturday night dancing with my group of girlfriends. We had a group at first, about 5 or 6 boys and 5 or 6 girls. We always used to meet together when we were younger. There was no drink, but there was a pub next door, so everybody at half-time used to go flying in the pub, for a gin and tonic or something. And, I just came for a dance. But he always used to come in, towards the end of the night because they were drinking. All the boys wanted to take you home. The dads couldn't take you home. And sometimes you'd go if you liked to, and other times you didn't. And then he just took me home, and then I didn't make any arrangements with him. It sort of fizzled out to the following week, and then we started going to the movies together instead of going dancing and things. And I was 20, because when we got engaged, I took my dad for a walk on Sunday morning to ask if I could get engaged. I did all the right things, and he said, well, you know, he said, it's just not, it's a thing you promise, and it's not a thing you do lightly. You don't just say yes, and, you know, he said it's a promise, so you've got to think about it. And he gave me a lecture all the way down, and so then we got engaged. We took it the night off, got the bus to Manchester in the afternoon, Saturday, and we went to this jeweller's shop, and we looked in the window, and we saw what we wanted, and we bought it, and then we went to an Indian restaurant and had a nice meal. And I didn't tell my mum, I didn't tell Marion either. And when we got home, when Marion came in, I just put my hand out and showed her my ring, and she did, she was going to cry. My mother too. My mother says, you know, that's not likely, that's a promise, you know. Mother was like, oh. And of course, she just said to me at the time, you know, well, you know what's expected of you, because, you know, if you want to get married in the church, you know, he has to be a Catholic. So I sort of put it, well, he was a Church of England. His mum was a big Church of England. The only reason I think he did it was the priest, one of them was an Irishman, Father O'Reilly, Vincent O'Reilly, and he talked with a real Irish accent, you know, because Matt was Irish, he liked it. So we decided we'd get married in the June of 1955. But I loved that job. I did that until I was pregnant, and then I never went to work at all in England, because I had Linda, and then 2 years later, Michael. And then Matt decided he was fed up with the weather, and he said, I'm standing on the station waiting for the train, and it's freezing cold and foggy, and there's a great big picture there of Queensland with somebody surfing, and he decided that we were going to go there. So we ended up going there. We came by a plane. There was just 67, we were on a Delta, 67 war migrants. We dropped off in Mount Isa and dropped people there. We went everywhere. We were in Singapore, we stopped every few hours because it was a small plane, so it was refueling all the time. But it was great. But we left England when Stephen was he was just nearly 2. He had his second birthday when we got into Brisbane. It was so hot. I just thought that Queensland was far too hot for me, and cockroaches by the ton. Oh, and that's my pet hate. I have this fear of cockroaches, and I always have a fear that they go in my hair. And it happened, because one night we were in bed, and this is gospel truth, and this particular night, there was a noise and something landed on my head. And I let out one unholy scream, and I put my hand on, because I won't, but there was something there, and I threw it and yelled, and Matt jumped out of bed and he's grabbing his pants to pull on, you know, his trousers on his pyjamas. And he goes, what? And he puts the light on, and he's looking round, and I'm looking round, I couldn't see a bloody thing. And I said, there was a cockroach flew on my head. And he goes, where is it? So we're pulling the sheet back and looking. I'm looking under the bed and looking under the pillow. Not a sign. You're dreaming, he said. Get the light off. Don't be stupid. It's nothing. You've imagined it. I said, I did not, because I had to will my hand to get it. I had to say, get it off, or it'll put eggs in your hair, you know. And I'm terrified to touch it, but I went like that and I went, yow! You know. Do you know what? We had a big wardrobe at the end of the bed. There was nothing we could see. We got in bed and went to sleep. Next morning, there it is sitting up on the wall. I said to Matt, now look, that was on my head. So I'm there with a bloody can of spray, and nearly used the whole can on it, you know. Somebody came to visit us. One of Matt's friends came, Ray, and he stayed with us, and we decided he had a sister emigrated to Sydney, and he'd come to visit her. And so he said, why don't you go to Sydney? It's much better. So we packed up all our things in the car, and we drove in the car, oh geez, with everything, stuffed everything in. And when we came to the border, he said, have you got any apples? You know, you're not allowed to take fruit. And he says, would you open the boot? And I said, I wouldn't open it if I was you, because everything would probably fall out. But he did. And he goes, God, where are you going? He said, it's all the household thing you found. I don't know how we did that. But we stayed on a little while, and then Ray was in Melbourne. And I said, I want to go to Melbourne. I had a feeling that Melbourne was more like England for me. You know, I mean, I love Sydney, but because I've seen pictures of shops and things, I thought, let's go to Melbourne. So we gave notice with the men, came all the way, travelling overnight. There was like Ray and Matt in the front, and there was me, Michael, and the baby, you Steve, you know, lying on, oh God, it was a hell of a thing. And lying across, sleeping overnight, you know, but we managed to get here. We got here on Sunday morning. Nowhere to go. Sundays closed everywhere. So Ray knew of a place in Alma Road, and he said there's a rooming house there. So we went there, and the lady, there was a front room, one room, and it had a double bed, a single. She said she had another bed and a cot. We rented that for the time being, and we stayed there until we could afford to have a flat, and we moved down the same street and Alma Road, because we're right near the school for the kids, you know. So it was really good. So, and that's where we stayed for quite a long time, quite in Alma Road there. I was in a working town, mining, so I wanted to be close by the beach, and I liked St Kilda Beach. I had started work when Steve started school, and I started at Queen Victoria in the city, and I loved it. It was all women there. There was no computers, it was all done by your head. We were in Paterson Street in Middle Park when Matt passed away. He was having trouble. This particular night, he went in the bathroom and he came out and he said, I don't feel well. And I said, what's wrong? And he said, oh, I don't know, I feel awful. And he sat down and I thought, okay, I'm going to ring the doctor. And this doctor came and he just looked and he just said, I said, he just got to the Alfred, he's got a book and all these pills and that. And he said, I'm going to send for the ambulance and take him. So the ambulance came and I went with him. And the ambulance man said to me, oh, you're very calm. And I said, I've done it before. I said, I've had years of doing things like this, because a lot of women start crying and bawling what's going on. But I thought, I can't do anything for him, so he's better there. And I think I went home about 5 o'clock in the morning, walking home. It was only within walking distance. I walked home, I had a shower, got myself something to eat, and I went to work. I don't know how I did it that day, but I did. I had no sleep. And then he just never came out of that one. I went to see him and they said they're going to do something with his heart again, the third time, and I thought, oh no. But he was really not well. He said every joint hurt him and things like that. This particular time, he called us at work on the Wednesday and said, you better come in. So I rang the boys and we all met at the Alfred. When we got there, he was back in theatre because the bleeding wouldn't stop. So I didn't like that, so we stayed for a while and then we went home. So that Sunday we went to church and we just got halfway through the service and Stephen comes creeping down the aisle. You know, we're going to communion and all this business, but in the end I realised that Michael said, we've got to go to the Alfred, of course. We go, because all my friends there saw it. They saw us going on. So we get in the car, went to the Alfred. This would be about 11 o'clock mass, so it'd be lunchtime. And there was a machine beside him, like something on a pole, and it was ticket flicking. And I said to the nurse, what's happening? She said, that's ticking telling us, and if that stops, he'd be dead. Michael starts crying, and so then I starts crying. And Stephen can't take anything like that. He said, I'm going out, he went out. I said after, tell Steve to come in and say goodbye, because the numbers were dropping, and I knew. And I was thinking awful, I don't want to see that. And then it started going up, and I said, oh, Michael, it's going out. But it was the last flutter, and there was a doctor sitting, and all of a sudden it stopped. Steve was outside, he wouldn't come back, and Sue was with him. Anyway, he just slowly came over, and he just got the curtain, and he just pulled it round, and he said, I'm sorry, Mrs. Patterson, he's gone. And I just thought, oh, God, I didn't know what to think, you know. The machine had stopped. You know, I was thinking all these things, and go out, Michael, but Michael wouldn't go. And so we stayed with him for a little while. And that was the end of it. He was gone. And so I came home, Middle Park, and I said to Michael, I've not a clue what to do. I don't know what to do. Then Mr. Jeff Kennett decided that he was going to get rid of some of the hospitals, and they closed down Prince Henry's Hospital and closed down Queen Vic, and they built Monash out in Clayton. And so you could have gone to any other hospitals if you could get a job, but I decided I'd go to the new one. We were updated with computers and everything. There was a big step up. It was difficult. We got it pretty quickly. I must admit, sometimes we'd say, help, I've got stuck, I don't know what I'm doing. And one of the guys would come down and say, well, you know, this and that. We had a screen we were always on, that feeding most of the info on, you know, but it's a change. It was a complete change for me, you know, from doing everything with the fingers, adding up columns and, and I couldn't believe myself. I thought, why am I working doing wages? And I hate maths. But I was going. And it was good. And I loved it. And so I worked there until I was 60 years old. I was going to stay on, but I decided that Jeff Kennett was offering $500 to everybody who went, plus all your long service leave and plus all your sick leave. So I decided to take it and go, and I did. So I knew somebody who lived in Latrobe Street, and they were going to Queensland, and there was this house on the corner. It was rent private to a couple. I said, I'll see if I can get it, and I did. It was about $70 a week then, and I took it. And I lived there for years, and it was just like my own. If anything happened, I'd ring and say, look, the switch doesn't work. Mr. and Mrs. Sims would say, get an electrician, and I got the electrician, he fixed it. I paid him. I said, make the receipt out to Mr. Sims, and I would send it to him, and the money was in the bank the next day for me. So we had a good relationship until he passed away. His wife was in a home, and she would ring me. We still rented, but it wasn't quite so easy to get things done. But in the end, I got a letter to say that they were going to sell it because she, I think, needed the money for the home. And I was looking for somewhere to retire, and I found this place, which is the Veteran Affairs. Even though I wasn't in any forces, my husband was in the RAF, still not a veteran as old, he just did his service, but it didn't matter if he'd served the country. So I came into a little unit here, and I like it. We get a lot of things. Rent is not too bad, because it does go up occasionally, but everything is good. They do the garden, and we get, you know, you need anything done, you ring them up and tell them to come and do it. So that's the story of my life. I learned to knit from my mother. My mother knitted everything for us, and when we were about 11 or 12, we started knitting for ourselves. And we all knitted. We used to knit cardigans, never bought. We'd always go to the wool shop and knit. We used to get two balls. And all of us have been like that, knitting. I don't know much about Kathleen but Mary did, and Hilda did. I did, and Marion. Marion was knitting as well, but now Marion crochets. She crochets little hearts, puts them in the little red hearts. I think he's putting them in the birthday card for me. I've got two in the bedroom, but I can't crochet. Linda can, but I can't. Because I do a blanket, and then I give it to Linda. She crochets all around for me and give her the wool, but I can't do it. And now I don't do much because I can't even hold a needle. I used to knit for hours. I've knitted shawls, I've knitted blankets. But now I love to. I've got lots of knitting in there. I've done quite a bit for Sean when I knew when he got engaged, because I thought I won't be around when, you know, maybe when he has babies. So I got a box, and I've done a shawl, and I've done little booties and little hats and pull-on hats and little bonnets and that for him. And so he doesn't know about that, but I said to Linda, when I'm gone, it'll be all parcelled up for him, I'll give it to him. If I'm alive, I'll give it to him myself. Because he's only just engaged, so that might be a while. He's getting married in January next year. Now my fingers turn corners, and I can't even grip half of the things now. My funeral is paid for. Everything is organised and paid, and I did that when I turned 80. So they've had a good interest on my money. Maybe it was a foolish thing to do, but it's already paid for and done, and flowers ordered, church ordered, everything. So, so all I've got to do now is just pass away. I never regret leaving England. I'm pleased with what I've done in my life. I've been very independent, but I've had a good life. I think I've had a good life. I've worked. Nobody's ever given me anything. Whatever I've got, I've done myself, and I'm proud of it, because I've sort of put money over, which I never touched, and kept adding little bits to it when I could. Yeah. Amazing, isn't it? When you think back, jeez.